So what can we tell about the world from the Soccer World Cup? Right now, I think the happiest person in the world is Donald Trump. He's at the center of the universe with his 52 million Twitter followers hanging on every word that he says. He's created chaos in markets through his policy of tax cuts in America and the trade war, which is driving a strong dollar, pulling money out of emerging markets where we've got weak currencies and weak markets. And South Africa's caught up in that contagion, where we've suffered from a weaker rand, weaker bonds, and weaker shares. So it's quite scary sitting in the southern tip of Africa, having someone in America jerking around your future. And that's why I think it's important to gain perspective. And one of the best ways to gain perspective is through travel. And I was lucky enough to go to get some tickets to the opening game of the Soccer World Cup in Moscow. Now, the hosts, Russia, are experts at operating outside of America's sphere of influence, and that's a result of the Cold War and the sanctions that are in place. And to me, it looks like they're doing just fine. There's lots of cranes across the skyline, and if you actually look at their macroeconomic numbers, they are stark in their contrast. So Russia has a current account surplus, it has a budget surplus, and its debt to GDP is 15%. You contrast that with America, which has a current account deficit. Its budget deficit is 4.6% of GDP, and its debt to GDP is more than 100%. And it's not just about Russia, who clearly won the game 5-0, but the losers, Saudi Arabia, are also looking much better. Talking to their fans, it's clear how excited they are about the extensive reforms that are taking place there. And it's very possible that they will be promoted up from a frontier market to an emerging market. Just sitting in the stadium, you can see the difference. The advertising billboards are Hyundai from Korea, Wanda from China, Qatar Airways. There's even an Invest in Egypt banner going. And you can see it in addition with the fans. The whole world was there, but so many people from emerging markets, particularly from Asia and Latin America. And there's clear evidence that the emerging middle class is becoming wealthier and starting to spend more money. So does Mexico beating Germany tell us who's going to win the World Cup? Well, in our business, we don't believe in forecasting, but what we do believe is that decent macroeconomic analysis can give us an insight into the future. And right now, the US is stimulating through tax cuts to get additional growth. And as we all know in our personal capacities, it's great fun borrowing to spend now, but you will have to pay in the long run. And once this starts to fade and slow down, I'm confident that we'll want to be investing in emerging markets as opposed to in the US. And the timeline for that is probably sometime next year. Of course, our biggest emerging market exposure in our funds is our South African assets. And here we're particularly excited about the sell-off in South African bonds. South African bonds are now yielding more than 9%. So if you take off inflation, that's a real return of more than 3%, which means that our future returns are getting better. We've been adding some of these bonds into our portfolios, and it highlights how this uncertainty is actually creating future opportunity. So the perspective that we gain is there's lots of opportunity in the world. You don't want to sign up for Donald Trump's Twitter account. You want to rather spend that time watching some soccer. And the one forecast I am prepared to make is that the United States is going nowhere in this World Cup. And that's because they didn't even qualify.